rambling on. I'll go ahead and start this second part. Again, this is going to be a little bit more advanced. We're going to be connecting to a data source, and then I'm going to show you some functions and calculations using the Excel formula bar. This is probably, if you're working with data and you're analyzing data, the most important part, which you'll interact with and you'll actually write some complex formulas for. So we'll talk about the syntax that's there and then give some examples of some more advanced things. I also think a lot of papers are written in APA, so it's nice to have that understanding of how to use an APA format in Excel, which copies and pastes really easily into Word. So you have that ability to embed a figure, an APA descriptive table that prevents you from having to write in words what that APA style guideline is. This is something that, again, is out there on the web, and they do a really good job of giving that information in those shortcuts. And I'll try to go slowly and explain any of the shortcut hotkeys that I'm using as I'm navigating around. I think sometimes watching the videos, the most valuable thing that I get is some trick in Excel of, a couple of keys that I can press that replaces a lot of work. And then we've already created the pivot chart, but I will talk through, now that we've created that, also formatting that in an APA style. And so that, again, allows you to paste that into your Word document and have that benefit. The guidance around which database to use, which cloud platform to use to connect to your data is a little bit beyond. I can give you things that I've used in the past that have been successful for me, but a lot of it's driven off of who's hosting it, who's managing it, and what they're familiar with. Azure is a relatively new cloud-based database, which is hosted by Microsoft, and so it plugs in really well. It would have the same functionality as SQL Server would or Access would. I can't speak as much to some of the other non-native platforms like Oracle, MySQL, which would be pulling data sets in. The nice thing about connecting directly to a data source in Excel is that when you base charts off of the columns and the relative references of the rows, anytime your data, which is recorded in that database, changes, it'll update your chart. And so I see this a lot when I was working professionally. I saw this a lot on dashboards that were giving key performance indicators. So as more transactions were coming into the business, they were able to see, that sales were increasing or profits were decreasing or those types of things. And that's all using just an Excel workbook. You can also write custom queries using Excel to limit the data. We're going to use the GUI to restrict our data that's flowing in and just really kind of skim along the surface of this idea. I encourage you guys to look into SQL as a programming language. It's really powerful, even though it doesn't have as much of the packages and features as something like Python or R does. It is effective at doing the kind of filtering and cleaning that we'll look into in a more robust way or in a more performant way. So I'm going to go ahead and connect to this data source. You'll see here that I've given in the Google Drive a Northwind database, and this is actually a really simplified version of what is a sample database that you'll see a lot on the Microsoft Developer Net as you're working through help and tutorials as a resource that will guide you to creating the different functions and the different forms and all the functionality which is in Access. For those of us that have PCs, or if you're working with a school computer or remoting, getting a VM into a school computer, if you don't know what I'm talking about with a VM, I'm talking about a virtual machine, which is basically a remote desktop connection. It's like a tunnel, like the VPN or the virtual private network that you use to get to your files on the shared folder. It allows you access to basically a school networked computer where you can run Microsoft applications. You can run Windows and all these different necessary functions. So if you don't have a remote desktop connection set up or a VM set up, Again, go to the knowledge base, and the gold answers, the IT department can help you in that way if you're needing something and you don't have access to campus. I know that's something moving forward with the new plans for the fall that's going to be really vital. So um, those resources are out there to help you. So I just wanted to show what the full Northwind database looks like. So you can see here, the only thing that's in this database is just this one table. This table, these are just records. So they're individual orders, some information about how much shipping was paid on that order, and then the customer's name and address. So each one of these represents a single order from this company. Relatively straightforward, relatively simple. If I go to more templates here, so I clicked on this file in Access, and I just search for the online template of Northwind. This is actually, it's listed as a template, but it's actually a sample database, which you can talk through a lot of, or the Microsoft Developer Network talks through a lot of examples using it. So if you're interested in using Access, if this is the first time maybe you've seen it, and you go out to the Developer Network, they'll talk a lot about the Northwind database. And this is what they're talking about. And so this is also what I've pulled my example for. So you can see here that the orders table, which exists here, looks really similar to the orders table we had there, just some shipping information and those types of things. Just want to give you some context because we are going to be pulling in this data set into Excel. I'm just going to open a new Excel workbook. I just did that by right-clicking in the File Explorer. You could also go to Start and get to that information in that way as well. So up here in the top, in the ribbon again, I'm going to go to Data this time. And I'm going to go to Get Data. So again, in this far left, just like in the Power Pivot, we're using this far left area. When I click that, it's going to give me a couple of different options. So I could pull from a text file, another comma delimited file or tab delimited file, from Azure, like I was saying, from another type of database connection or a query. And that is where you would basically plug into different external things. So they have these add-ins, these external plugins, which will help you to connect to databases that aren't native, like Azure and Access. You can see here the Oracle, MySQL, and a couple of more. You guys probably are more familiar with this than I am. I stay pretty much in the main enterprise platform. So some of these are open source, and they're available for you guys to use. So again, we're just starting with a blank database. Our goal here is to pull in some data for our analysis. And the nice thing about pulling it in this way and creating charts in this way is that if the Access database gets updated, if there's a new row that gets added, and I refresh this data connection, then it will actually refresh my chart, and it'll add that additional inventory, that additional order into my visualization. So when I click on the Access database, it's going to ask me, where is this Access database that you want us to point to? I saved it to my desktop, so that's where it's going to go. With larger data sets, and this is one of the reasons that I reduced the size of the database, the sample database, it can take a while to process. So it's running through your memory that's cached, and it's building out almost an application inside of an application. This GUI is really exhaustive and thorough in the ability that you have to control what's pulling in. You can think about your database, which exists, and your Excel workbook, which exists, and then this is building a pipeline between the two. And as the information is flowing between one and the other, You can stop some of the data. You can change the way that some of the data is flowing. The same way you could change with a transformer the value of the electricity or that sort of thing. So kind of trivial. I only have this one order. If I had a bunch of tables or I had a bunch of information, I can use this navigator. And it's going to give me a preview. This preview isn't all the data. It's just a selection. Um, but you can tell it looks very similar to what we had in our access as we were looking through it. Always good to give a double check, especially when you're using some of these non-native pieces. If I wanted to just load it immediately, if this was all I wanted to do, I would click load. I'm actually going to go into the additional step of transforming some of this data. And very rarely do you get a file which has everything in the right format for your visualization, everything without any missing values. Especially when you're collecting live data, you're going to have things that you want to modify. Excel is going to try to recognize the different pieces and what their data type is, but Excel is notorious for miscategorizing things. And if you have a field that is text that starts with 0 and Excel categorizes it as a number, it will actually drop that leading 0, and this can lead to a lot of problems with your data. So always try to express the value of checking and making sure things that are text are imported as text and pay special attention to leading zeros. Value of ship date. I'm actually not going to need some of these values because what I want to do is write some formulas which show the days that things were shipped late. So if things haven't been shipped yet, they don't have a value in ship date. That value is actually null. So just looking for an example here. There are some examples here where the ship date is null. So I'm going to filter this data and remove those fields which are not shipped yet. So I'm trying to, again, kind of manufacturing a business problem. Looking at my transactional database of the orders, and I'm looking for our performance as far as what are we getting out on time and what things aren't we getting out on time. So here in the ship date, I'm going to click on this small down arrow, and I'm just going to unselect the nulls. When I unselect that null, it's going to go ahead and limit from 824 rows to a smaller number. It's not actually giving me the amount that it is, but it's less than 824. I think it's like 801. Now you can see that if I click on that again, it's saved that choice, and it's never going to pull into my data, into my worksheet from the database, those values which were null. I'm also going to change the required date and the ship date are in a data type that I don't really want. Up here in the top, they've got a data type of date time, and I just want them to be dates. So again, I can do this here before I've even imported it. With large data sets, this is only 800 rows. If you had 800 or 80,000 rows, I think I always try to remember what the limit is for Excel. I think it's 1.4 million rows, but it may be 140,000. So, but 80,000 rows is not an unrealistic thing. With this amount of sensors that are in airplanes and other devices now, you have lots of data. So being able to manipulate it here in the data loader is a lot more performant. You never pull the things in that end up crashing Excel and making people go, I can't stand Excel. Financial data in the same way, it really helps to limit this data set and perform any kind of changes to the data type before import. So I've made those modifications that I wanted to. I've removed the nulls from the ship date, and I've changed them to data type of date. And now I'm just going to click on this close and load here at the top. Again, there's tons of stuff that's here as far as if you were going to run a job that would refresh this query regularly for you. Lots of things I encourage you to explore. So 803, it's removed 21 of our rows, and it's given us just basically our select statement, our SQL statement here, and just kind of a preview and our queries and connections. It's put a default style on this. I actually like this default style. I think it's kind of cool. It's also filtered our data, so we have an ability to sort because we've got this filtering on. Just to show how you would get to here from just a flat file, I just want to point out that getting the filtering on these tables or on this sheet is pretty straightforward. It's just automatically done this because we went and got this data, and so it's assuming we want to do some analysis. So if I had a flat file, maybe a text file that somebody had shared with me, and I wanted to get this same functionality that I'm going to demonstrate as far as sorting from ascending and descending, I would just click anywhere in the header and click on this data ribbon and the filter button, which is right here in the middle. That's going to give me this ability to sort, and it also groups based on some information which is there. These values actually expand, so you can see it's recognized this as a date, and it's also giving me the different months and years in an aggregate way. So really nice. If you're starting to try to dig into your data, I really recommend using this filter button. You'll remember from our previous conversation about the design for the chart, we've also got that design for our table, so I can just select all the different options that are here. It brought in just a default option from the get data, on brand with the green. Here, you just have to put quotation marks around the value that you're trying to summarize. So sorry about that. I'll share this document with you guys so you can see all these. I do want to talk through the descriptive statistics and just give you that visual as well of how to change those to APA. But hopefully you understand how you can bring in this data in, and then how you can use these different formulas, these different functions to add and subtract dates, to write functions for days of the week and those types of things. And then also use that COUNTIF and SUMIF to find valuable insights. So now I'm going to show a special add-in, which is really helpful when you want to create APA formatted tables. So when you want to count standard deviation or you want to count frequency of a specific thing, to get to that add-in, it may not be installed. And so in your Excel, you'll just have to check under the Data tab to see if you have this Data Analysis section. If you have that Data Analysis section, you're good. You don't have to do this extra step. But if you don't, you're going to want to go to File and then Options, and then this Add-ins section. Under the add-ins, you're just going to look for the Analysis Tool Pack and check that Analysis Tool Pack. That'll give you the functionality to do the steps that I'm about to do. So once you have that installed, you can select the fields that you want to have information on, you want to have descriptive statistics on. These are mean, median, standard deviation, all those different things. Highlight them and then click on the data analysis. And it'll bring up a lot of different options. You can do ANOVAs, histograms, many different things with this tool. This is actually a VBA script that somebody wrote, a macro or set of macros, which runs in the background. So it's like, again, an application inside of an application. Choosing descriptive statistics will take you to the fields that we want to show. Here I've got my input range. I'm just going to select the values that I have. It can be a little bit tricky when you're navigating this way. I would encourage you guys to practice in Excel, and you'll find that you can use these references pretty easily. Like I was saying earlier, got that $sign and then the column represented by a letter. If it goes beyond 26 columns, you'll just start repeating letters. So you'll have AA, AB, AC. And then the row is just the last row that you have. I'm going to mark it as labels in the first row, and I'm going to put it in a new worksheet. I want to be sure and get the summary statistics, and I'm not worried about any of the K values there. So now you can see that it's gone ahead and taken all of that data that was there and it's aggregated it. By aggregating it, I now have this really nice, easy to use, and all I need to do is just move some of these fields around and format it so that I can paste it into Word. So I'm just going to demo how I would go about doing that. In APA, there's typically only 2 decimal places. In controlling those decimal places, I go to the Home ribbon, and I've got this ability to decrease or increase the number of decimal places for my fields. So I'll decrease the number of decimal places that are available. To make it a standard. Now it's given me some fields here that I don't need, or it's given me some aggregations that I wouldn't normally report. The standard error, the variance and kurtosis, and obviously you guys would want to, for your specific requirement for your statistics, decide which of these you wanted to use. The ones that I don't use, I'm just going to delete, and I did that by selecting the row and then holding Control and selecting the next row. And then just going to change these to be APA style for what they represent. I'm also going to change a little bit the way this formatting is, and you'll see why in a second. I've got the repetition of this column that I don't need. And then I can use the copy and transpose function in Excel. So I did Control C after highlighting, and then transpose. And that will give me the values that I need for my APA chart. I've still got to remove some of this background and give it a nice border. But you can see how I went from a data set to a nice stylized APA format for my mean, my standard deviation, and my number of values that were there really quickly. And so I use that just to show you that those types of add-ins and those abilities are in Excel because of the way that it's been written. You've got that nice ability to just copy and paste from Excel into Word, and it keeps a lot of the same functionality. If I decided I wanted to change the font or increase the size, I can do that here in Word. Here we go. So here again, even in Word, I can have this chart interactable because I'm still in Microsoft. I'm still in that same formatting. And so all the same functionality that I had in Excel is available here. Using these styles, using this paintbrush, will lead to some ease of formatting. Since we're staying with that APA style, we'll want to use a fairly simple formatting. And then just be sure that everything is labeled. So here in the chart design, I can add chart elements like an axis title for my horizontal axis or my vertical axis. And then I can also change some of this information through the additional options that are there. If you wanted to remove these bars in the background, just clicking on them and choosing delete is the easiest way to do that. And again, I think, as you guys experiment and you play around with these things, I just want to point you to some areas where I've seen some benefit in the past of where things live and how to navigate to them. So with that, I saw a question about how to get to that analysis tool pack. I can show that again. To see that add-ins, again, I'm just in Excel and I go to File, and then I go to Options down here at the bottom, and then Add-ins here on the left of the options. I already have my Excel add-in turned on, so it's already there, the analysis tool pack, and a lot of the school machines already have it turned on. If you don't have it turned on, you'll want to choose the Excel add-ins. You've got some other add-ins which are available. Again, these are applications inside of applications, so a lot of functionality, a lot of cool stuff here. But then after you select the Excel add-ins, click Go, and just click this check mark next to Analysis Toolpack. So yeah, thanks. Look forward to sharing this recording with you guys.